See it now.
Good.
Good evening and welcome to the council meeting of the 27th of April 2020. This meeting is being conducted with COVID-19 protocols in place for social distancing and isolation. The meeting is being conducted electronically using Zoom and is being live streamed on Facebook Live. Town Hall is closed to the public. However, the most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website, and the public may send questions directly to the CAO's email at krice@kentville.ca. Before today's meeting begins, I want to offer our condolences on behalf of the Town of Kentville, council, staff, and citizens to all the families and friends of those who lost a loved one during the senseless act of violence last weekend. We have demonstrated our spirit, and through our collectiveness, we have shown what it means to be Nova Scotia strong and Canadian. Although we may not know each of the loved ones, we know them as our neighbors, our friends, our teachers, our healthcare providers, our police officers, and those we see daily out and about in our town. More than anything, this is why we grieve together and share a sense of community. I will now call for a moment of silence. Thank you. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? I will remind members of council that we are in decision-making mode and we should be mindful of our decision-making wheel. We have committed to making balanced and respectful decisions and adhering to our code of conduct. We will be voting by poll. The chair will call your name and ask, "How say you?" This method permits us to verbally record your vote. Are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before the meeting commences? I would ask CAO Rice if she could please take the roll call.
Yes, Your Worship, all councillors are present and accounted for, and staff, myself, Jennifer West, and Jason Bethune.
Excellent, thank you. You have before you the proposed agenda. Are there any additions? Councillor Bolland?
I'd like to make an addition to new business. Donation to the Strong Together Nova Scotia Fund.
All right, thank you. So that will be item 6B. Item 6A, as previously circulated, will be EV charging stations. So you have item 6A, EV charging stations, and you have new business item 6B, which is a donation to the Nova Scotia Strong. I could have a motion to accept. Oh, Councillor, sorry.
Sorry, I was looking for my raised hand, not seeing it, but that's not a big deal.
So if you just bring your mouse down, it should, when you.
Yeah, I see it. Okay, thank you. There was an email that came out from Marnie Parker with regards to the float for Kentville and having it travel around the town. I didn't know if CAO Rice was bringing that up in her report or not, or if it was something that we could discuss at this meeting.
You could put it on the agenda. So Annapolis Valley
Float, I guess, just.
float, yeah. Okay, so that is item 6C. Apple Blossom Float. It's item 6C, so we have 3 new items of business. Is there anything further?
So move the agenda.
All right. And a seconder? Councillor Pulsifer? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. All right, you have before you the special council meeting of March the 9th. The minutes have been distributed. Are there any errors or omissions with the minutes? Councillor Maxwell.
Yes, thank you. This council meeting was the one that I was not able to attend because
Yes.
my mother had a very serious fall and was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, and I was with her for several days, so I missed that one. I noticed after reading through the minutes, I also discussed this meeting with a colleague after it happened. But I noticed in the meeting, in the minutes here, that I'm supposed to, or, was recommended that I would make a public apology. And I have no idea what that's about. I never received a copy of the report given by the CAO. I did not receive a call to come and discuss it. And, I don't mind giving apologies, but when I have no clue what they're for, I'm not likely to offer one up. So to say that that's been left hanging, I think is wrong. My response is that I was never told that I needed to give a public apology. The breach report that I put in, every statement was followed up with a quote from the Code of Conduct and the section from that Code of Conduct quote. And so until such time that it's pointed out to me where I made an error, I would say I don't owe an apology.
All right, thank you very much for that, Councillor Maxwell. I think the situation has basically overtaken us. As you know, March the 9th was when that meeting occurred, and then that entire week turned into COVID-19 focus, and basically everything else got put on the side burner. So I would say that until Code of Conduct comes back to us, as you'll recall as well, we did say that this would be back before us, that we would be having a meeting before 60 days. All of that is on the back burner. And I think that that's probably the best place for it right now, because we have things that we should be focusing on that I think are more important and reflect much better for our public. So as you say that.
I agree with you. However, I don't want to pass minutes that say that I have this situation unresolved, because I didn't know anything about this until I read it. I went all through our documents on the computer and again, discussed with a colleague. There was nothing, I couldn't even find anything. So I have a problem with that, being in the minutes and saying that I haven't done my duty here. So I'd like to have that taken out, please.
I think what we'll do is we'll leave the minutes for approval when we come back to the Code of Conduct matter.
That sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So if it's okay with the remaining members of council, we will leave this as outstanding action to come back with the Code of Conduct. Thank you. All right, you have before you the minutes of the April 14th, 2020 council meeting have been distributed. Are there any errors or omissions? Councillor Maxwell, is your hand still up, or?
Yeah, my hand is still up. On these minutes, I was looking at the discussions on the trail,
Okay,
and I felt that the points made, or the points itemized, were not reflective of a balanced discussion. There were points made by Councillor Bolland that were not included there, and there were points made by me that were also not included there. And so I would like a more balanced discussion.
Councillor Maxwell, I will remind you that minutes are not a verbatim recording of what has occurred. That's why we maintain our recording. This is a sense of what occurred, and they have been reviewed, and it is very reflective of the conversations that and the discussion that was occurring at the time. I do have one change as well on the point of order on page 5, point of order number 2. It should read that Councillor Andrew spoke out of turn with regards to Councillor Maxwell's comments. Are there any further changes or amendments to this set of minutes?
Move to approve.
Thank you. So we move on now to our unfinished business. The first piece of unfinished business is policy G50, collection policy. We have a recommendation from staff to approve the amendment to the policy statement G50, collection accounts, other receivables as presented. If I could have a motion to approve the amendments to the policy statement G50, collection accounts, other receivables as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Seconder, thank you. It's been moved and seconded that council approve the amendments to policy statement G50F, collection accounts and other receivables as presented. Discussion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I would just like, and I think, yeah, it was submitted by the CAO. CAO Rice to explain the benefits, or you know, why the changes are proposed, and how this will improve things in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Your Worship, the maybe you mute yours. The request came through from council because when the policy was looked at, the part of the policy, one part of the policy contradicts the other. So in what was previously called definitions, or is at the present, it defined different layers of privilege or authority for the writing off of receivables. And then when you looked at the procedure section on the second page for write-offs, it brought in that all amounts that are over $50, excluding interest, shall be submitted to council. So there was the policy, the way it existed, one part of the policy contradicted the other. So it was brought forward, it was brought back by Councillor Andrews to revisit the decision that had been made at the previous meeting around that. And so council requested that the policy be made clearer. And I know that, and the solicitor is probably going to speak on it, that there's some discrepancy between whether any amount should be looked at by staff, or whether all of it should go through council. Obviously, it all goes through the auditor with the year end, but that was the reason why it was brought back this way. And does that answer your question, Councillor?
Well, I guess I understand it was brought back, and then we had a discussion, and you know, things have to be cleared up. but the benefit of giving the finance director the ability to write things off up to $500 and going from 500 to 5,000 for the CAO to have write-offs. I guess my problem with it is if something gets written off, it's going to be the council that has to answer for it. I would like to change the policy to anything being written off has to go through council, whether it be $50 or $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever. Yeah, I sort of was looking for an explanation on where there's going to be a benefit and how this will improve things. So
Yeah, these are just suggestions, and it's just basically tidying up or maybe just closing it up a little bit. Certainly not meant for council to approve it exactly the way it is. I guess a starting point to the amendments, but certainly it can be changed so that all write-offs. And I know the solicitor, Jeff, were you going to address section 38 of the MGA? Okay, did you want to? Okay.
Go ahead, solicitor,
Worship.
please.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I raised this with the CAO. I understand the administrative attractiveness of doing this, but my suggestion was going to be that if there was an appetite to move this forward, that it be tabled to allow some time to investigate this. Section 38 of the Municipal Government Act says that the treasurer shall promptly advise the council of A, all monies due to the municipality that the treasurer considers cannot reasonably be collected after pursuing all reasonable avenues of collection, and B, the reasons for the belief that such monies cannot be collected, and the council may write off the amounts determined to be uncollectible. So that section appears to place the authority for write-offs in the hands of council, and a quick review, and I have to admit it was very quick, just before the meeting when I was reviewing the package, a quick review didn't identify any authority for council to delegate this to staff, and typically anything that requires an exercise of discretion has to be decided by council. Discretionary things typically cannot be delegated. So I think the first issue is identifying the authority to allow staff to do write-offs, and then if indeed there is authority, then determining what amount you're prepared to delegate. The avenues of collection, those reasonable avenues of collection that must be pursued, I would suggest that that's very ripe for placing in a policy, a collection policy, so that staff in the finance department know what steps they should be taking around collection. That need not be a council policy, but it could be. It could simply be at the staff level, and that in and of itself might provide some reassurance to council if all matters or matters over $5,000 or whatever matters come back to council later. It may provide some reassurance to council that staff made reasonable efforts if indeed council adopts a policy around what should be done before an account's written off, so that when it does come to council, council's reassured that indeed all those steps have been taken, and it need not be something that takes a lot of council's time. So those would be my comments.
So solicitor, if I could paraphrase for a moment, are you suggesting that we table this motion as it sits currently?
If there's an appetite to move it forward, then I would suggest that it be tabled to allow time for staff to investigate whether there's authority for the delegation of the power to staff. Yes.
Then again, I will ask you, should we allow this motion to fail and put a new motion on the table, or procedurally, which way should we go?
it matters not from my perspective. It can be tabled. There is a motion on the floor to approve it. It can be tabled, and I would suggest that if the majority of council are going to vote against it, they might vote against tabling it, and then the motion would fail, and there would be nothing to deal
No
with
change.
it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Savage, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Worship. So I made the motion. I'm happy to amend the motion if the seconder concurs. But that being said, I would suspect that the finance department probably has the operations and the efficiencies in place to know what procedures to go through if an amount isn't being, if it becomes uncollectible. There's probably a number of procedures that takes place before they actually would recommend a write-off. So I guess not being overly familiar with the policy in the past, because I don't know that we've written very much off over the years, or the years that I've been on council. I just assumed that there was some level of monetary amount that that the director of finance and or the CAO had, before it had to go to council, but that's not the case. So I guess that's really all I wanted to say. But if you'd like me to withdraw the motion, I'm happy to do that, and so that we can determine the authority for delegation.
All right, thank you. So we'll withdraw that motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, CAO, please.
Yes, Your Worship and Council, I just wanted to draw to your attention the fact that this is a policy that was put in place back in 2001 by the council of the day, and has been the practice. And then for some reason it was reformatted in 2017. But certainly we can, as staff, we can go back and see where this, where it originated and why. And we'll get something ready for council.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. I'm wondering, Kelly, if when it does go back to staff, and being critical of the policy and not of staff, I guess, could we find out what measures are used for collections, and possibly B, what new measures we could use? I've asked a couple of times about small claims court, and I've been told it's it's pricey and it's this and whatever. Those costs can be recovered through the claim, but I'm wondering if we could explore that as well, since it's going back to staff.
Absolutely, we'll pull that together for you.
Thank you.
So do we need any further action on that CAO to take it back? All right. Moving on. You have before you the request from Annapolis Valley Regional Library funding, and they have sent an invoice to the town of Kentville requesting payment of the new proposed funding formula for 2021 fiscal year. So if we have a motion to approve the payment of the new proposed funding formula to AVRL for 2021 fiscal year in the amount of $42,800, vice $36,948, an increase of $5,852. Thank you.
Second.
Seconder? Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the payment of the new proposed funding formula to AVRL for 2021 fiscal year in the amount of $42,800, vice $36,948, an increase of $5,852. Discussion? Councillor Pulsifer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just had a few comments on it. I might make note that there has been no increase in library funding in 13 budget cycles. For more than 10 years, Kentville's assessment has been frozen at 36,948. And I will say that by contributing the extra $5,852 now, it does allow more money to be put into the library operations for this year. AVRL wants to provide the best service possible for its users as soon as it is able to. By not funding now, it provides a bit of a setback to some of the library services and some of the programs that they might want to implement this coming year. The library is the backbone of our community, and it is there for everyone to use, all ages, all genders, and all members of our society. And to be able to provide the best programs is always the ultimate goal. It is a true community hub, and it has been one of the busiest in the Valley. By supporting this monetary request now, it does show that the town of Kentville's commitment to our library and allows them to have all the necessary funding to carry out their work in the coming year. So those are my comments. I did notice that there were only 3 other municipalities that have not agreed to pay at this time. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell, please.
Thank you. Yes, I looked through this and I thought that it would be a good idea to support this request. I know that there's a lot of users in Kentville for the library, both seniors and young families with children. And I'm sure that there are even more than that, but I know we have a lot of users in those 2 categories for sure. And I think anything that can enhance the programming for those people, I think is a good thing. And I think this is exactly the place where community goes to look for those services if they're not able to provide those services for themselves. And I think it's a good organization for us to support. And I would like us to continue with the support. So I'm for this.
Thank you. Councillor Savage.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Can I direct a question to Councillor Pulsifer?
Certainly.
Okay.
And the reason this question is being directed to Councillor Pulsifer, she is our member on the library board, just for clarification. Thank you. Sorry.
So, Councillor Pulsifer, I actually, one of the things that you mentioned was that 3 other municipalities hadn't confirmed back yet. And that was going to be my question, if all the other municipal partners had agreed to the increase. Do you know which ones hadn't?
I believe Annapolis County hasn't, Wolfville hasn't, and the town of Middleton hasn't. Those are the 3 that were reported here in our affidavit sent to us. So
the other question that I had, and I'm looking at the formula funding model, 2021. So it shows the staffing costs at 2.1, rounded up to almost 2.2 million for staff.
yes.
I'm just wondering what the remainder of the budget looks like. Or do we have
I don't have that information like in front of me, Councillor Savage. What do you mean the remainder of the budget? Who?
Like the other, so that is the part that makes up the staffing piece of it.
Right.
What else makes up the expenses? I was just trying to get a sense of, in terms of what percentage of the wages were of the, and if you don't have it, that's fine. I just
I don't have, because there's so many facets of the funding for the libraries. I mean, the operations, the supplies, just
overall budget.
Many things. Pardon?
The overall budget, I mean.
Yeah, I don't have all of the budget in front of me.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Appreciate that.
Okay. So I'm not prepared to to support this request. And my reason is the fact that the province, through the NSFM, have told us that they will give us 1 year's notice before we get any increases in these shared services. And I feel that if we go ahead and fund this, that we're breaking down established practices that we have fought hard to have through our provincial government. Because there was a time when they just dropped increases on the laps of municipalities without verifying to see what municipalities' capacity was. And I think that if we fund this, then we're going around a procedure that we've put in place and that we've fought hard to have in place. I truly believe the things that our libraries do, but at the same time, we can see by the information that we've been provided, 24% of the increase is not going to happen because of the 3 municipalities that are not supporting this. So does that mean that those municipalities will not have any increase in service through the AVRL? Does this mean that those employees that work in those towns are not going to get a pay raise? So I feel that it just puts things in a really bad position. So I guess I would really call on the province to step up and make the letter come out. If you recall, we went to a meeting at the Old Orchard, and the province made the presentation that this was going to happen, but they never followed it up. And so I just feel that our regional library has been put in a position where it has to come hat in hand and ask us for this funding. Councillor Andrew, you have your hand up.
You're on mute, Councillor Andrew.
I thought my hand was enough. So thank you. You actually, Mayor Snow, thank you. You answered part of that. I find this a hard one to decide on. I would need more information at the very least. As it stands right now, and with the province's position, it does seem like a peculiar time for us to be to do something that invites a bit of a download onto us as a municipality. The timing of this seems really really odd. I hate to turf or cast away our library. I feel like I need more information on this at the very least, and maybe even you reference the province's position. I feel like it's almost there's an education piece here. It's great to see the numbers and they make sense, and it's a really hard time to be asked to even a relatively modest increase. And I'm also, this time is going to result in some reshuffling. And I think we need to be wary of that, because there could very easily be a tendency on the part of the province to shuffle a little bit of additional our way. And while it's a great cause, so I personally, I feel like I need more information. It's not necessarily a no. I just need more information.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Worship. Just looking at the letter in our package here, it actually quotes, these documents were sent to municipalities prior to the consultations in the winter of 2019, which is obviously over a year ago. I'm looking at that, and that's from the Minister, Deputy Minister of Communities Culture. As well, it says the assessment on the property has been frozen at 36,000. If we don't accept the formula, the assessment's going to go up. And the other issue I have is, this may be a question through the solicitor or through to CEO Rice. If we decline this, how's that going to affect any funding relationship with the County of Kings that we are in partnership with actually on this library?
CEO, if you could respond to that, please.
So your worship and council, partially, if you look at the February the 26th letter that's in your packages, it does say that although the 1-year notice was it says it was provided to municipalities. What we received at that time was a letter stating that that there was a potential for our funding costs to go up, and that we should keep it on our radars. And at that point in time, the NSFM went back and reminded the province that the 1-year notice that they were to give municipalities on any changes with the mandatory cost, they were to include in that letter the cost, the increase that the municipalities were to be looking at. And the province did come out and ask all of the municipalities to send to them the costs that the municipalities bear for their libraries on top of these mandatory provincial payments. And it was staggering, the additional funding that all of the municipalities gave to their libraries, and rightfully so, because it's extremely important that these facilities are funded. So I just wanted it to be clear that at that point, the municipalities never received a definite 1-year notice letter. So whether the NSFM has had further discussions, or perhaps the library, nothing has come through to us. So, we certainly could contact the NSFM and the province to see, where they are with that.
Just getting myself unmuted. Go ahead, Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Worship. So as a follow-up, the CEO, is there any repercussions to us if we decline this in regards to the County of Kings or any other partners, financially, for wages or?
No, well, there's no repercussions to us. I mean, it does state that the 1-year notice, they're saying the 1-year notice was provided to municipalities, but it also says that the municipal funding will remain at current levels for 2021, which that is the current levels being what they are prior to the increases. So I'm not sure whether all of the regional library boards have gone to their municipalities with these same letters, or whether it's the Annapolis Valley Board. I have no idea at this point, just what we have received from Annapolis Valley Regional Library. Repercussions, I guess the public opinion, when you look at it, is certainly a repercussion. But as was brought up earlier, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it, but when you don't have all of the partners stepping up, then you have some partners that are paying a smaller amount, some paying a larger amount, but it isn't clear whether the libraries in the municipalities that are paying the larger portion, do all of the libraries benefit from all the funding, which, hopefully that would be the case. You wouldn't want to see one particular library suffer because, for some reason, perhaps fiscal constraints, that municipality couldn't increase the funding. So there are quite a few questions unanswered, but I don't see repercussions as per se.
Mute is on, Sandra.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think, I like to deal with black and white issues and solid facts, and it seems like a lot of questions have been raised here by your comments. So I do support this funding, but it seems a bit of a gray area. If there's an appetite to defer this, if we could, that's just my opinion, but it seems to be a lot of questions raised about repercussions, et cetera, and the funding formula. Is there any urgency to this? maybe Councillor
Coming
Pulsifer.
on to budget time, that's our urgency. And I'll just remind you that it's the ones that have not paid are Middleton, Wolfville, and the County of Annapolis. So they've already decided to not increase their amounts for 2021. Councillor Pulsifer, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to maybe draw your attention to the fact, the support that we have, given to other mandatory services such as King's Transit and Valley Waste when they've approached us for perhaps more urgent funding, but we have always been there as a support from the town of Kentville. I guess we've not maybe gone into great discussion or questioning of their need for that increase, but I just did want to mention that. And I believe that it's safe for me to say that if we did not agree to pay the funding, I mean, our library in particular would not get penalized because of that. Basically just lowers that increased amount of funding that would go into the pot to provide servicing for all of the libraries. I know that, the executive director or the board itself will not say, well, just because you didn't pay, you're not going to get that extra maybe a couple hours of being open on a certain day, or, your program will be cut down. But I think this increased funding is a spread over all of the libraries in the Annapolis Valley. It's a commitment that, especially since we are in partnership with this library with the County of Kings, I just feel strongly that we should be along hand in hand with them, and they've been willing, obviously, to go forward with this, in agreement and this commitment. So we are in a partnership with them in a way for the funding as far as our library goes. We don't stand alone. So I just want to mention that.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor, I see your hand is up for the first time here.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to comment and say I too fully support the library. My family uses the library a fair amount, but because there's questions on the timing of the letter and proper notice that's given, and I'm as you know, I am a stickler for, if we've got a policy in place, we maintain the policy. So. In an ideal economy, there are questions on what's going on with the funding and the ask, but the economy that we're in now. So although I do support the library and an increase when proper timing is given, I think just the basic economics that we're in right now, we wait until the date that we actually owe the money for. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the other thing that I want to remind all of council of is that this funding is the provincial funding that goes to AVRL. This is not the town of Kentville and the Kings County funding that goes directly to the Kentville Library. So this is the big Annapolis Valley Regional Library pot of money that comes from the province, not from the town of Kentville. So when we talk of partnerships, we're in partnership with everyone that's in the Annapolis Valley Regional Library Board. So just to clarify that. Councillor Maxwell, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I think that when I look at this, we haven't had a raise in our assessment for a decade. And I'm sure that's probably the case with everybody's assessment. I don't like making our decisions based on what everybody else is doing. I think we should think about our citizens and what we can do for our citizens and what we can provide for our citizens. And not having a an assessment raise for over a decade. Of course, if we give them the extra funding, of course, I think our people are going to benefit from that. And maybe the smaller communities that have been mentioned, maybe they don't have that ability. I don't think that we're in a terrible financial crunch in Kentville. The chance that the province is going to come forth with any more money is very slim because they're dumping a lot of money into COVID. But I don't like to see our citizens suffer because we can't make a decision because 3 other people have decided not to go with it. And so, you know, I do support this. I think that I'm thinking about our citizens and the benefits that we can give to our citizens for this. And so that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Worship. First, let me apologize, Councillor Pulsifer. I missed that part of the discussion where it said agreed to pay and agreed not to pay in the memo that CEO Rice had done up. But do we have any idea why Middleton, Wolfville, and Annapolis County? Because I know Annapolis County's portion is just north of 16,000. Do we know why they weren't prepared to go along with the increase? No.
CAO can speak to that.
Okay, sure, thank you.
Councillor Savage, I can't 100% guarantee the answer, but the discussion, pardon me, the discussion was that they felt that because we hadn't received the proper notification the way it usually comes out from the province, but also that it states that the funding levels were to remain the same. Yeah, but I don't have it in writing,
Okay.
but just from discussion that the reasoning was because they had not formally received a 1-year notice letter from the province.
Okay.
That's for the provincial mandated costs that the municipalities have to pay to the province for libraries. This would not affect, regardless of what your decision is with this, it would not reflect the direct funding that the town gives to the library. That would not be affected.
Right, exactly.
That's still budgeted for, and that would still be there.
That's what I thought. Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew, your hand is still up.
It was, yeah. So appreciate the discussion because it's helping me understand the dynamics of this a little bit more. So ultimately, the rationale for holding this up, it seems, is simply that, and I don't want to say simply, but I will say simply that proper protocol wasn't followed. I mean, otherwise we don't see this as an unusual or an outlandish request. I'm not suggesting in any way that proper notice shouldn't be given. It does seem like someone dropped the ball there. It should, and I suggested before that I would look like more information. Is there information that would be helpful to this discussion, with discussions potentially that CAOs would have, or that mayors would have, that would lend to this and give us some more information to, or you don't see that as okay?
I have nothing more than what you have seen here.
Okay.
Although I did attend the provincial session at the Old Orchard I believe it was in January or possibly early February. And it was very interesting. But again, the province was talking about this increase occurring next fiscal, not this fiscal. And if you read the letter from AVRL, what you will see is that AVRL is asking to have the funding a year ahead.
Right.
So and the CAO was also pointed out that we don't know if other regions are doing the same or not. But we know that in this region, AVRL has gone out to its constituents and asked for them to pay next year's fees this year, the increase, and that 3 of them have opted not to. And we are, it would appear, the only outlier because we haven't made a decision yet.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Pulsifer, you have your hand up.
Oh, sorry, I
Oh,
don't.
Okay.
No.
Councillor Bolland.
Where's the button to put my hand up so I can rest my left hand?
If, are you in the view where you can see the participants down the side of your
No,
screen? Yes?
no.
Okay, so if you take your cursor and go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see something called participants at the bottom. If you click on that, it should give you a
Gotcha.
sidebar with all the participants, and you should have a mute button and a raise hand button.
Okay.
Okay, good. Your hand is raised.
Yeah, so I'm going to support this. I'm not so concerned about the timeline. I'm concerned about, this library has a lot of users from our community, from our town. I'm concerned that if it's not approved, if it's delayed just for the reason of timelines, it might have an impact on some of the tenants there, such as the cooperators and others. If the timeline was as believed to it should have been, would we still have supported it? I'm sure we would have. So parking that aside, I'm in favor of supporting this and moving forward. It's not a lot of money. I don't see an impact with the County Kings, our partner, or on the assessment. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
So Councillor Bolland, I want to reiterate that this is not about the Kentville and the County of Kings partnership for the Kentville Library. This is about Annapolis Valley Regional Library as an entity. So the head office in Berwick, and then each one of the satellites or each one of the libraries. So this is not about Kentville and Kings County and the Kentville Library. It's about the bigger whole of the Annapolis Valley Regional Library. All right, is there any further discussion? Councillor Pulsifer.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment though on the fact that, the County of Kings pays, I think, 40% of, and we pay the remaining percent as our kind of joint contribution though to AVRL for our library.
That's
I mean, that's the way that we were able to fund this library, was between the partnership with the County of Kings and Kentville. I just want to say that if, they have approved their funding and we don't approve our portion, this year we won't pay as much as they will be as they move forward this year. So I just do want to reiterate that fact. Thank you.
Councillor, the funding that we're looking at right here is not the funding. There's still a line item in our budget that goes up annually by 2-point-something% to account for inflation for funding of our library. And that is where that 40-60% comes from. This funding is the provincial mandatory. We don't pay this to our library. We pay this to the province. So this is not what keeps our library going. This is what keeps AVRL going. Councillor Maxwell.
I understand that this is the assessment by the province. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And AVRL runs all of the libraries, right? So if we increase the funding to AVRL, then all the libraries should receive some spin-off from that funding. The province isn't going to ask for an increase this year because they're more concerned with COVID-15 or COVID-19, and I think that I'm still looking at a decade. We've been frozen for a decade, and so I'm sure that the AVRL has areas where they need to put that money in order to deliver services at the same level that we're already experiencing them at, or actually giving more service. So I look at it as a plus for our library, as it is for every other library, if we can help AVRL to deliver those services or run that organization at a level that they feel is necessary to be run at. And so, you know, I don't see where we would lose anything on this. And they're just asking us to, you know, let's do it this year instead of waiting till next year. And, you know, I don't see that we would have a problem doing that. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in terms of these funds that go to the province, and as you said, the budget that we're doing up for this year, we allocate for an increase of 2.5, whatever CPI is, that goes directly to our library here in the town of Kentville. Is not impacted in any way by this, correct? Thank you.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve the payment of the new proposed funding formula to AVRL for 2021 fiscal in the amount of $42,800 vice $36,948, an increase of $5,852. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
No.
Councillor Bolland, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Pulsifer, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Andrew, how say you?
Councillor Andrew, you're on mute.
I would have done lip reading, but you were turning the other way.
I'm going to say no.
Councillor Savage, how say you?
No.
I say no. The motion is defeated. All right, we move on to our council reports, and I will give each of you the opportunity if you have anything that you wish to relate with regards to your report. Councillor Andrew.
I guess, I'm still on here. No, I don't think so. I think it was Joint Fire Service. We decided that there was no point in pushing forward with a meeting at that time. So we haven't had a meeting, and lots of several meetings. I think there may even be one more than I put on my report for King's Transit. A lot of things the last while seem to have been, I think, like Councillor Bolland called that gray area. There's been so many things that there's not necessarily a straight wrong or a straight right. It's just you have to make a decision, and one of those decisions. So the transit service remains suspended at this time, and I think I think that's going to remain so until the province loosens restrictions at least. And so that's where we are. There's still business to attend to. There still are expenses, and so we will continue to have regular meetings, but remotely. Aside from that, I for my part, and I'm not sure what hat I'm wearing always, but with regard to response to COVID-19 locally, Kentville, Kentville is in really good shape in terms of food security, in terms of being able to attend. We have such an amazing group of people, volunteers, many of whom are not known to me prior to this. It's amazing the number of people who've stood up. And in fact, there were calls that went out to people in our community who wanted to volunteer, but there simply weren't enough spaces. There weren't enough jobs for them to do to assist people. I mean, to me, that's something we can really brag about here. It's been terrific. So that's it for me.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Bolland, please.
Yeah, just my reports in your package, just a few items relating to Valley Waste and COVID-19. So the spring cleanup has been postponed for now due to some staffing issues around COVID-19 and physical distancing, et cetera. So you may see that spring cleanup be in the summer, but or it may be totally canceled to the fall. So it's a wait and see issue. The budget has been approved by all the municipalities except for 3, but that was as of last week. We, of course, have approved it. So, and the last item, just regards to COVID, unfortunate news, is the beach cleanup that was partially funded by the province that I was going to lead with Aldershot and Dwight Ross schools. That has been canceled due to COVID. And we meet again next week. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. The only thing really that of any importance that that I have to report on is the police commission. The police commission has, I guess I'll say, reluctantly passed or voted to recommend the police budget, not for any particular reason other than there's a collective agreement that's outstanding, which the commission has yet to see. We've yet to see any numbers. I've seen a preliminary, but there's been sort of a lack of communication and a lack of transparency on, and Kelly's not going to appreciate this, but the feeling on the commission is there's been a lack of transparency, a lack of communication with the commission on this, and the collective agreement is going to affect the upcoming budget. Yes, we have reserves to cover because the collective agreement has been out for a year, but you know, it's going to affect this budget. So anyways, that, and yeah, that's all I've got to report on for the police commission. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Yes, thank you. I have attended my regular council meetings here. I also attended the police commission meeting, and where we did pass the budget, and we did do a discussion there on the transparency. But I will say that a number of commissioners were pleased with what the CAO had done as far as making some contact to look at where we stood, where the members stood, and so on, what they were looking for and things like that before actual collective agreement started. And it wasn't everybody. There was a number of us that thought that some of that initial legwork was a job well done, and we're hoping that that might pay off once the collective agreement has started. And we were also hopeful that once the collective agreement starts, and we were reassured by CAO that our chair would be included in that collective agreement discussion, and of course the chair will be included in those collective agreement discussions. So that was my interpretation of the police commission meeting.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Worship. So I'll just report on 2 committees that I sit on. One of them, of course, is the Investment Advisory Committee. And so just give you a synopsis of that. So at our last meeting of IAC, our investment advisor essentially, mentioned to us that none of us really saw COVID-19 coming, but nevertheless, we had planned for some sort of an emergency. We sold growth and we raised cash before COVID hit. So we have our $460,000 that we inject into the town's operations with no additional buffer required. So that's really great news for this year. So there's been various years where we've had downturns in the market, 8, 11, 15, and 18, but certainly nothing like what we've experienced with this downturn. So when we reviewed the reports and recommendations, it included our return to date, which is negative 5.1%. And our portfolio value is just under 13 million. So we have weathered very, very well in spite of the downturn in the market. So very comfortable with that and happy about that. We reviewed our current holdings and decided to stay the course. We have about $500,000 that comes due in May of 2020. We'll look to invest in some sort of another investment vehicle at that time, but no decisions have been made yet. We'll sort of see what the market does over the ensuing month. We continue to review and revamp our IPS, our investment policy strategy, while being conscientious of the returns and capital gains required to sustain our annual income required of this portfolio. So that's just an update on IAC. Regional Sewer Committee, we have not had a meeting. However, we do get updates. Town of Kentville, the council passed the budget at our last council meeting. We had an update from the technical committee that the numbers are good. TSS is up a bit. That's total suspended solids, probably due to the disturbance in the pond because some new airlines installation work is happening and there's some heavy loads from the industry. I won't go into that. It's a little bit sketchy, new airlines. So screen building has been flooding and more frequently due to higher loads from PepsiCo and Town of Kentville. So I talked with Director of Public Works, David Bell, and the Town of Kentville is going to look into doing some independent testing. So more investigation we'll hear on that. I also heard back from Scott Quinn with the County of Kings, and he talked about seeing spikes in real time around the RG5 station, which are consistent with Apple Valley. The sensor detected what a spike or two can be caused by some sort of a cleaning agent or a chemical. Probably suspects that it could be from Valley Regional Hospital or some of the senior residents due to COVID-19 and using additional cleaning agents. So all that being said, we'll look as a town to do some more independent testing as time goes on. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pulsifer.
Thank you, Your Worship. My report is very brief. Attended the last council meeting and the last CAC meeting in our new format. No meetings have been held with Kings Point to Point since our last meeting. We will have one this week by a teleconference. Annapolis Valley Regional Library has not met. And the Accessible Advisory Committee has not met since our last report, but we will be having a meeting this week via Zoom or some way. I'm not sure just which, but anyway, it won't be in person. So I will have more to report at our next meeting. That's my report.
Thank you very much. All right, so you all have my report. I think one of the highlights has been the Atlantic PACE Committee meetings. So right now, the town of Kentville, the town of Wolfville, Berwick in Nova Scotia, Stratford in PEI, and Charlottetown in PEI are what is forming Atlantic PACE, and so we've had quite a few meetings and just going through and looking at the application for the FCM, and it's actually some very exciting work. So we'll just move on as time goes, and I'll keep you up to date with that. You've heard from Councillor Savage with regards to the investment advisory. And Wednesday evenings, the mayors and CAOs and wardens get together with the NSFM to have a Zoom conference. And typically there's been 88, 89 of us online each Wednesday evening and talking about the issues that are foremost to all of us. The other thing, been doing some video work and some recording with the with the radio station. It started out that I was going to the radio station, and then we figured out how to do it via phone. So everything changes with what we're doing. You've also seen that I had a couple of telecons. The first one with our MP Cody Blois. Just know that our MP is very engaged, and he continues to bring things forward. And I have to say that the FCM has really shifted gears in this time period, and they are advocating for municipals and for funding coming to municipalities. You'll recall last year our gas tax was doubled. And when I spoke with our MP, I asked him for his support when they're sitting at the table with the FCM to ensure that if that comes to the table, that they support it. The other conversation that I had was with His Honor, the Honorable Arthur J. LeBlanc, our Lieutenant Governor, and he was reaching out to all the towns, all the municipalities in Nova Scotia, just to get a sense of where we are. And of course, it's always kind of wonderful to be able to report about Kentville and to talk about the things that are going on here. So all I can say to our citizens, to our members of council is just keep up the good work. It shows in everything from the lights that are on at night to when our fire department does a little parade, so to speak, whether it's for a little girl's birthday or to commemorate a fallen officer. It's absolutely wonderful. So get those flags out there and keep them flying, because it means a lot to people out there. The other thing, I received a note from the Valley Hospice. So this should probably be a really exciting time for the Valley Hospice, because their building is almost done, and they're doing some few minor finishing touches. They've received a shipment of beds for the rooms. They're waiting for the rest of the furniture, and they want to celebrate, but here we are. We're social isolating and distancing, and no more than 5 people, so we can't have a party to celebrate what this community has done. Because the one thing that I want to remind our entire community is that this hospice was built by our community. 100% of funding had to come from the community. It was not funded by the province. Mind you, the staff and the doctors who will be occupying that space are funded by the province, but the hospice itself is truly the building, the heart of a community. So I just want to remind you that through all of this, we have continuing and ongoing good news. So the other thing, annually, I provide you with a list of the gifts that I have accepted in the conduct of my duties, whether you invite me to dinner or send me flowers after I've done something or send me a teacup. I still account for all of that. And this year I accepted $608.38 worth of things in the conduct of my duty. You have the entire note there for your review. So that concludes my report. If I could have a motion to accept the council and mayor's reports as presented.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that council and mayor reports be accepted as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We move on to our new business. The first item on new business is electrical vehicle, EV charging stations. So we have a recommendation from Nova Scotia Power and the Department of Energy and Mines seeking expressions of interest in partnering to install EV charging stations in our community. They are currently creating a funding application to Natural Resources Canada and would like to include towns and municipalities across the province to participate in a joint application. So this program will cover up to 50% of the charging station infrastructure costs, and each charging station is approximately $7,000 to $8,000 installed. The application is due June 11th, 2020, and funding decisions will be made by October. We understand that during this pandemic, there's much economic uncertainty. However, successful applicants will have until April of 2022 to install and commission the chargers. So I have a motion here for council to approve partnering with Nova Scotia Power and the Department of Energy and Mines to install EV, electric vehicle charging stations in Kentville. And further, the program will cover up to 50% of charging station infrastructure costs, and each charging station is approximately $7,000 to $8,000 installed.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve partnering with Nova Scotia Power and the Department of Energy and Mines to install EV charging stations in Kentville. Further, the program will cover up to 50% of charging station infrastructure costs. Each charging station is approximately $7,000 to $8,000 installed. Discussion, Councillor Andrew, I see your hand is up.
What kind of consultation will happen with the town in terms of the location?
That will be our selection. So all we are doing here is approving having our name as part of the application. And then once we get the go ahead and get the funding, we will make all of those decisions.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Savage, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Your Worship. You just pretty much answered it, but I also had the question about roughly how many we would look at installing, 1 to 2 maybe?
I think that's a decision we need to make. If you wish to make an amendment, or we can vote on this and then vote to have a number, I throw it up in the air. Councillor Bolland?
Thank you, Worship. I think this is a good move. This is thinking ahead. Be aware, though, we have one in town now, but that's a slow charging station. Certainly the newer vehicles, the Teslas of the world, need something quicker. There is one located in Colebrook opposite Tim Hortons. That's a Nova Scotia Power install. But I certainly think if we can get one and place it strategically, like behind Town Hall or Center Square, it'll be a bit more of a draw from people commuting through the valley to come in here and charge up and get a coffee and go to Lawton's, etc. But I think it would be a good asset long term. So I support this.
Councillor Bolland, if I might, can I ask, do you recall when the one at the rink was installed?
I attended the UNS or FCM Sustainable Conference in PEI, and they were being sold there at the trade show. Through the CO, I purchased one they were on sale, and that was probably 7 years ago. Just Us Coffee purchased one as well, and that's located in Grand Pre. And I think Berwick has the same model as well as Digby. So
quite old.
6, 7 years ago. It's still being used. I see cars there charging, but
right.
the new version we're looking at here is a lot quicker.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Maxwell, you have your hand up.
Do we know how well used the charger is right now that we have?
We have no data at this point.
Okay, thank you.
We'll send an email. Councillor Andrew, your hand is up. Still up again. Councillor Maxwell. Do we want to wait for that answer prior to moving on, Councillor Maxwell, or?
I think for me, I would kind of like to know how well used the one that we have right now is. And if we're looking at putting out, $7,000 to $8,000 for 1 or 2 or 3 more, I'd kind of like to know, is it getting used every day? Is it used several times a day? Or is it once a month? Or, how often is it being used? Is it being used by one person in town? Or, I would kind of like some data on that.
Okay. Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Worship. Being a frequent flyer around town, well, not so much lately, but I only see vehicles plugged in there maybe 3 times a week. So I would caution us on this. I would like to compare or have staff compare the specs on what's being proposed versus what we have. I would hate to see us spend taxpayers' money and have basically the equivalent charging system in town that we already have. So if someone can look at that, I would hate to see us waste that money and have two of them.
Okay, thank you. The CAO has a response to Councillor Maxwell's request.
Yes, I just received that there are 3 to 5 cars which use the station at the rink regularly, and it is used every day for most of the day. It's being monitored by our facilities manager.
And these are the latest technology ones. These are not old technology. So it's like the ones, the fast charging one that that you've mentioned, Councillor Bolland. Is there any further discussion?
These are level 2 chargers.
They're called level 2 chargers. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think in my motion I need to specify how many we need. I think I'm comfortable just saying that we're of the spirit that we want to move forward and see if we even qualify for the program for them to do 50% of the costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Worship. So going back to my original concern, the current charger we have, I don't recall if it's a level 2 or a level 1. Would you know that, Mrs. Kelly Rice?
The new one or the old one?
The current one we have, yeah.
Sorry, the current one that we have is a level 2 charge.
And the one proposed is a level 2, correct?
Yes, yes. There seems to be that 1 to 2 more level 2 would be appropriate.
But we have a level 2 now, and this is proposing for another level 2.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't support that expenditure then. We don't need 2 in the town. That's my opinion, but.
Councillor Maxwell. Your mic is off.
Is the 7,000 to 8,000 the 50% cost, or is it 50% of 7,000 to 8,000?
50% of 7,000 to 8,000. So $4,000 we would get a charger.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we are chosen by MSPI to participate in the program, we don't necessarily have to, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
We only have to once we accept funding.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Pulsifer.
Thank you. Is there a lifespan to these chargers? Do they wear out? Is there a possibility of needing a new one down the road? Is this an opportunity for that, or do they just work for a long, long time? Anybody know?
Well, the one that's at the rink has been there, as Councillor Bolland said, for 8 years.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's a good lifespan.
Pretty good.
Councillor, Deputy Mayor, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. I hear Councillor Bolland, who is the sort of the green councillor. I'm just wondering if there is a higher technology and we're able to get it. But my other question, or I guess a response to Councillor Pulsifer is basically this is a plug, right? There's no moving parts. It transfers power to and from, and I would assume the lifespan of one of those things would be many, many years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Savage, your hand is up.
My apologies, I just lowered it. Thank you.
Very good. Is there any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve partnering with Nova Scotia Power and the Department of Energy and Mines to install an electric vehicle charging station in Kentville. Further, the program will cover up to 50% of the charging station infrastructure cost. Each charging station is approximately $7,000 to $8,000 installed. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell, how say you?
Not at this time.
Councillor Pulsifer, how say you?
No.
Councillor Savage, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Andrew, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Bolland, how say you?
Yes.
I say yes. The motion is carried. Next piece of business is a recommendation from Councillor Bolland to donate on behalf of our residents to the Colchester County, although not clear on the amounts. So I'll open the mic to you, Councillor Bolland, please.
Thank you, Worship. So we've all been through, and I'd say all, I mean, the whole province, the whole country, heck of a week, the last week with the shootings 8 days ago in Colchester County. There are a lot of people impacted by this individual, husbands without wives, children without mothers, financial impacts, psychological impacts, etc. A fund has been started called the Stronger Together Nova Scotia Fund. The County of Colchester made a donation that I read on media of $4,000 late last week. They had an emergency council meeting, and they're doing other financial contributions as well to the victims. I think it would show great leadership on our behalf as a town to make a contribution of up to $2,000 to this fund. The fund is being administered by the province of Nova Scotia. And I think it'd be a wonderful thing if we can make a contribution. And then with some solid media behind that, maybe other municipal units would follow Kentville's lead and doing the same thing to help out these people. And I certainly think it's a very defendable expense for our taxpayers in the town to help support these families in Colchester County. So that's the concept.
So we have a motion to make a contribution on behalf of the town of Kentville of up to $2,000 to the Stronger Nova Scotia Fund.
Second.
You move that, Councillor Bolland?
Yeah, I'd like to make the contribution $2,000.
So the motion is a contribution on behalf of the town of Kentville to donate $2,000 to the Stronger Nova Scotia Fund. Is that correct?
So moved, yes.
And you're making that motion?
Yes.
Seconder?
Second.
Councillor Gerard? Deputy Mayor, sorry. It's been moved and seconded that council approve the contribution on behalf of the town of Kentville to donate $2,000 to the Stronger Nova Scotia Fund. Discussion? Councillor Andrew.
I think that was my name. Do we know what the money is being used for? I know this is really sensitive, and I just want to be cautious about that. Just is this money that'll go in trust for kids who are survivors who lost parents? I know there's a lot of, I mean, if I were the victim of a tragedy, my family would have no worries. And I'm just an average Joe. So I just, that's what I'm asking, I guess, straight up is what's the money for?
Councillor Andrew, I have the cut sheet here from
Okay.
from the website. The Stronger Nova Scotia Fund. The Canadian Red Cross will work in partnership with the Government of Nova Scotia to provide support to individuals, families, and communities impacted by the Nova Scotia tragedy with immediate and long-term needs, including resilience and capacity building. Donations can be made online.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Worship. So Colchester County, the contribution that they made, is it to this Stronger Together Nova Scotia Fund, or did they make contributions to individual residents? Did they encourage their residents to make contributions? I just wanted to get a sense around that.
So Councillor Savage, I have the press release from the municipality of the County of Colchester, as well as both sets of minutes from the meetings that they held. And it says that at the meeting, a motion was quickly tabled to support families of the victims left devastated. Council moved to contribute up to $5,000 to help offset the funeral expenses of each victim. So that's 5,000 times 22.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, sure.
Okay. I see two hands up. You've already both spoken. I'm assuming that Councillor Andrew, no, you're good. So I believe that as elected officials, we have several roles in a tragedy such as this. The first is to reach out to our colleagues and our community to offer our condolences and support. The second is the leadership to encourage our citizens to contribute as they are able to the Stronger Together Nova Scotia Fund in collaboration with the Red Cross and the provincial government. We as elected officials, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our citizens, and we need to make challenging decisions and set priorities based on what is in the best interest of our community to ensure that their tax dollars are spent in support of services expected by all of our citizens, and that we're making sound financial decisions based on priorities, resources, and services, and not just emotion. I have spoken with our colleagues in Colchester County, and unfortunately, I've only been able to leave voicemail in East Hants. But I would suggest that we write letters of condolences to our colleagues on behalf of Kentville. And I'm also going to put the CEO on the spot here to update council on a citizen-led initiative showing our support to the families and friends impacted by this tragedy. CEO, the Burger Hill.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm
We still
sorry.
have a motion on the floor here.
Sorry.
What's that?
Sorry, I thought we
Okay.
had a motion to,
Yeah, there is a motion, but we're still talking.
sorry, yeah.
Okay. I just can let council know that late this afternoon, I did receive, and I thought it was timely because of this discussion, so that you all know that a group of citizens, an artist and some others are painting a billboard to go up on Burger Hill. That shows Nova Scotia Strong and hashtag, again, we are Kentville, and that should be going up within the next few days. So just so council is aware that people in the community are also doing their part in different ways to support this initiative and supporting the victims of this horrific event.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Worship. I would agree that it is a very, very sensitive issue. And I would be more inclined for us as a council to encourage the residents of the town to contribute to the Stronger Together Nova Scotia Fund. That's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve a contribution on behalf of the town of Kentville of $2,000 to the Stronger Nova Scotia Fund. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
No.
Councillor Bolland, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell, how say you?
No.
Councillor Pulsifer, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Andrew, how say you?
No.
Councillor Savage, how say you?
No.
I say no. The motion is carried. The motion is defeated. So the next piece of business that we have is the Apple Blossom float, and an idea that has come from a citizen. And I would ask Councillor Savage to take the lead on this, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think we all received an email from a citizen essentially just saying, you know, talking about what's transpired over the last few months and of course last weekend. And so she said, you know, folks feel nervous and anxious, scared. You know, they pretty much just want to stay in their homes, and they're encouraged by the province to stay in the homes, of course. So the timing of her message, I think is appropriate. So she said, I'm just reading from her email here. I'm sending this to many of you associate with the town of Wolfville and the town of Kentville, the village of Port Williams, town of Berwick, county of Kings. And it's basically, sorry, I'm just opening up the attachment here now. Wondering if that we could put our floats in the respective towns and take them around the town. So there could be social distancing. There would be no congregating of citizens. Just basically our float would be prettied up a little bit from last year, and then it would be able to travel throughout the neighborhoods in the town.
Thank you. So the one thing that I'm going to put on the table here is that the floats, and I know that the leadership candidates from last year was also part of the recommendation that came from the citizen, and I know that the Apple Blossom Festival is very conscientious and very cautious of where their candidates go and the sort of thing they do. So this may be one of those events that is probably better coordinated through the Apple Blossom Committee and the board of directors. I have a feeling that we could probably con Deputy Mayor Gerard into driving a vehicle pulling the float, and I'm already imagining a couple of councillors' heads out the sunroof, and maybe a fire truck or two, and you know, I mean, with all the sadness and all the anxiety, maybe, you know, driving around town with a float, and maybe if the Apple Blossom Committee doesn't want us to use the leadership candidates, maybe we pick one of our members of council to sit on the chair and wave madly, or at least wave madly in your neighborhood, and just switch bodies as we change neighborhoods. But I think there's probably some fun to be had here, and maintaining social distancing and all of it. But I guess I'm going to take a poll to see if you're the least bit interested in it, and then we'll push it over to the Apple Blossom board and see if they're on side, and then maybe we can get something done. I mean, we have a whole month, and you know what? If we're stuck inside, then maybe through social distancing and that sort of thing, we could get our float decorated, because I'm sure there must be a garage somewhere that we can tow it into that's not actually being used right now. And Spike is pretty good at social distancing as well. Councillor Maxwell, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I read the lady's email, and certainly I think it's a good idea. And I know people, are feeling down and confined and so on. I'm wondering, she did mention that this would be a community by community kind of event.
Mhm.
And so I'm thinking if we're seriously considering trying to put something together, staying under the health protocols, that maybe this should be an event that we turn over to KBC, and we allow them to arrange the event for the town of Kentville. What we do doesn't have any effect on anybody else unless they want to do something within their own community.
Yeah.
But KBC is our go-to for special events, and those heads may be able to come up with something that would fit.
So you didn't think my idea of deputy mayor driving with people's heads poked out the sunroof as?
I think, if I don't have any problem with the deputy mayor driving unless he's got a problem with his driving record. But, I think he's probably okay. And I'm sure there's a few heads that would like to stick up through a sunroof. So.
All right.
Yeah. I just like KBC to organize it.
Good, thank you. I've got that note. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I really do think it's a great idea. I think the timing of it is really great. I mean, if KBC, can take some initiative with it where it would be considered a special event, I just wouldn't want to see it get lost. I think it's probably pretty easy to put it together if the deputy mayor could, tow the float. And, we had Spike on the float. It really would be, I'm sure the kids would love to see the princess, but, that may or may not be allowed, who knows? But I just think to make it as fun and for the kids as we possibly can, and just to bring people's spirits up, I just think it's a great idea. And if KBC can organize it, but I'm sort of looking to CAO Rice, thinking that, the rec staff could probably, organize it, put it together pretty quickly, maybe.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Just because there's been comments, I would absolutely drive a float around. I wouldn't even ask for gas money.
I wasn't even thinking you had to use your own vehicle. As I recall, you were a Jeep driver the last time you drove in an apple blossom parade.
And who has a standard Jeep in this day and age? That's all I've got to say about that. I would gladly drive any truck that's available.
You could wear a crown.
Just don't paint signs on this.
Councillor Pulsifer.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the fact how nice it is that a citizen has come up with this idea and, was willing to put it out to all the different towns and communities. It's nice to have that involvement, and if we can make this work, I think it's wonderful. It's a great idea. We'll bring the float to the people instead of the people coming to the float. So yeah, it's great.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Bolland, we haven't heard from you.
No, I support it. It's a good idea. We have to watch the timing of it. We don't want people to come out on the sidewalk to see it. Of course, we're breaking our distancing rules, but and no offense to Deputy Mayor Gerard, but in an election year, I'm not sure the optics might not be suitable if he's driving his stick shift Jeep behind the wheel, but you could be discreet, could you not, Deputy Mayor?
Me be discreet? Absolutely.
That's his middle name.
That Jeep is now in Hants, Windsor.
I certainly think it's going to be some staff involvement. I mean, the float has to be decorated, redecorated. So I mean, I'm not speaking for staff, that's the CEO, but who's available on the staff side to decorate a float, etc. But let's look into it. It'd be a good morale booster at the right time.
You. CAO, please.
So I guess this is a good indication because I just received a message from staff, and the message says the float belongs to the town, our staff decorate it and our staff can pull it. And as they do each year, and not sure, but if it's helpful, they're on board 100%.
Oh, that's great. Yay.
Okay,
So that proves staff are listening to the council meetings too.
Councillor Andrew, your sense.
John, you're on mute.
All right. I laugh every time one of you does it, and then I had to keep doing it. No, I think it's a good idea. It's a fun idea, and I think it wouldn't just be kids that would like it. I think there's lots of people who would like it, and I think people can use some simple cheering up. I mean, best case scenario is we're not living this way by that time, but it seems as though any easing off of is going to be fairly slow and gradual. So I think it's great timing. And we've got a lot of streets in Kentville, so there'd be quite a busy day actually of driving around and slowing down and beeping at people, and I think it probably is a real gift for our rec department and our staff. When's the last time they got to be involved with and do something fun? I mean, I could go for anybody, but I mean, I think it's a real neat to be asked by the people who make the decisions, I guess, to go out and do something like this seems like kind of a cool thing to do. If the weather's right. So anyway, so I'm all for it.
Excellent. All right, then we will push that over and see what happens. And thank you all for your input on that one. So we do have confidential legal business. It's purely updates, which must be conducted in closed session. And we do require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda items. We will not be returning to Facebook Live because these are just updates. There is no decision being made in the closed session. So if I could have a motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that council move into a closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into a closed session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And the time is 5:54. So if you could shut Facebook